most of you are aware that we've been having these conversations for several months now, Michaela, right? Like
Hmm.
at least several months. So we started a group. Michaela's a key member in that group. Everybody has been really great in that group. On Facebook, it's a Wear group, and then we're starting an outlet called Wheels and Feels, because yes, we're all skaters, but you know, I think the human aspect is something that's very important because we're all people, and there are things that affect us, outside of the immediate skate world that are really important, right? Just as equally important as skating. And something that I've shared with Be Free and Michaela and Philip Moore and everybody, and I've shared this with Ramel and Caleb and just us two on our recent talk. In skate culture and rollerblading culture, it's a very prominent thing where if it's not a trick and it's not something that we can buy, uh, most times people don't want to talk about it, right? And the whole reason that we started this whole forum is to make a space for these conversations, because yes, we are skaters, but we're people first, right? And my personal feeling is that if you can't talk about things that affect us as people in our very community, then how strong really is that community? So to your point, Reese, I'd like to know some more, if we can maybe start with you in that respect, and maybe explain a little further your experience.
Sure. I've been skating for 20 years, if you can believe that. And uh, as I mentioned, like no one really taught me how to skate. No one really helped me out. Everyone was kind of just doing their own thing. And, some people got better, and like those people were valued much, much more than the people who weren't seen as good, at skating. And when I would ask for help, people kind of just, maybe they would try to say something here and there, but they'd really just couldn't be bothered for more than 30 seconds about it. So also like being, the only female for a long time, in my community, like, that has interesting things that I could totally go off on a tangent about. So I'm gonna get away from that for right now, and bring it back. So yeah, I do feel for sure there's like this ableism thought, you know, this kind of attitude that we only care about you if you're good at skating, and you really don't matter, and it really doesn't matter how bad of a person you may be, as we've seen over the years, right? The various rollerblading scandals. Um, it doesn't seem to matter how poorly behaved some of these guys are. I've only heard of bad stories about guys. Um, so yet they're still hailed as like amazing people, amazing rollerbladers, right? They're still sponsored. They suffer no backlash. So that's definitely something that I've noticed and that I've felt, directly.
Yeah, I like how you phrase that in terms of ableism. Um, Be Free, I would have a question for you about that too, right? As someone that teaches
Hmm.
how to skate, and you experience people of all different abilities, right? Like, what's your take on what Reese shared in terms of that? Like, it's sad to think that you only have value because of how good you are.
Well, I mean, that's you know, I understand too, like you being where you are, being like a product of your environment. If that's, the case, which it is for a lot of people, where we get discouraged really quickly if, it's not something to be able to just go to the skate park and ask someone some help for something instead of being felt like you're being judged or you're not accepted here because you're not able to do this, and that. Um, my biggest thing too with my classes, I have students all the way from the ages of 4 all the way up to the ages of 70. So it's like to see in such a big scale of people who want to skate or they feel that they can skate. That's it's a mind state. And one of the things I advocate in my classes in my school is a mentality thing. I think one of the strongest things that's been helping us grow and getting people more motivated is just being able to create that mindset that it's not like you have to do this, this, and this. You have to do some crazy tricks. You have to like do all these accolades and stuff. You just have to be yourself and make it fun and be able to find a way to either use it for you want to skate because you want to stay in shape. You want to skate because maybe one day you would like to go to the skate park and be able to skate anything there, you know, or you just want to be able to do something new. So, you know, it's always that open space to kind of leave it to where the person wants to be able to take it. But I definitely feel where you are saying about how, you know, you may feel excluded from like the group if there's like a group of skaters, you know, cliques and stuff like that. You know, I definitely, you know, I've seen that before in my younger days too. Like, you know, I grew up skating in Texas before I started coming, you know, being here in California skating. Even though I was born here in California, but I didn't get into skating culture until I was in Texas, where being a black skater out there, that was like no one was doing that yet. So, you know, there's always going to be these like, you know, prejudice things. And those are just things of people who don't know, you know. So it's kind of good for us to be able to educate that in a way. And you know, I'm grateful to be able to help start a school to be able where there is some place where you can go and be able to get that kind of insight instead of having to feel like, and I'm the only one here at the skate that has skates on. There's no one else that blades. When really that's not the case. You know, you just may think that, you know, I mean, in some places, you know, it's we have that tendency of thinking that like we're like the black sheep constantly, you know, and I want to be able to, you know, advocate that, you know, there's a lot of people out here that skate and that blade and quad skate and do all these different kinds of skating. Got parkour skating, got dance skating, got so many different varieties of skating. So why to like hate on someone's passion because it's not exactly what I'm doing, you know? So it's a mind state. And I always try to advocate like, you know, if you can walk, you can skate, you know what I mean? So just take your time, you know, if you want to start running, take your time, patience with it. But we do need to be able to have more open arms to people. I think that's something that's you know coming more at light now, and I think it's happening more because there's more people getting into skating. There's a lot of new beginners that don't really have that park etiquette, or there might be these people that don't know anything about skating. They're just out there, you know. So it's our job to educate that and put that out there and not you know cut it off or dismiss them or you know it shouldn't be like that. You know, despite the person behind the face, you know what I mean. You know, make sure the person too is you know if they're going to be a negative person, you probably don't want that negative person around, whether they're good at skating or not. You know what I'm saying? So it's got to be the whole package. Like, you know, you got to be yourself, you know, make sure you're spreading that positivity. Be the one that has the open arms before you start, you know, just brushing off people. Because that person may be one of your best friends. That person may be someone that come back and be a very important person in your life. So you never know. So just yeah. And I feel for you. And I hate that you experience that. And I hope that you get to see more you know, open arms more in your journey in skating, you know, and our industry supports that too, getting more female, you know, opportunities. Like I think the Bladies movement is killing it, you know, they're doing collabs and just everything, you know. So yeah, it's just more. We just need more positivity, more education, more knowledge, you know, sharing and passing instead of it just being kind of like a football huddle. You know what I mean? The whole world should be able to be able to roll. You know, the whole world should be rolling, you know. So that's all I have to say. Sorry.
No, that was beautiful. I think that what resonates there is that the inclusion part of that, right? And how we include others that maybe don't have the skills that maybe we have or don't look like how we look. And Ramel, so I'd like to ask you about, you know, you shared a story with me about like what your exposure was to skating and skate culture, right? And so I think that's an important part when we talk about all of this stuff, like how we include other people, what our exposure is. You know, for example, like I'll just say, like, I teach, Ramel and I are from the Bronx, right? And so the Bronx for a long time, we're all from the US here. The Bronx has been a long time, like, unfortunately, the 70s and the 80s happened, right? We were the picture of like urban decay. And to this day, the Bronx still kind of has that stigma, you know, of being like from the, you know, the Bronx. And so in terms of like hardship and stuff like that. And so how we expose, especially young people, for me, I'm very passionate about that, to something that they may have not had the opportunity or access to be exposed to, I think is really important. So Ramel, like, what are your thoughts about that in terms of inclusion and getting, you know, how do we get everybody involved?
Well, first I'm gonna start by saying, like, I've been a victim of it when I first started skating. I remember learning how to skate, and predominantly at first it was street skating, you know, just skating around, learning how to skate a bench. And then you know, I found Malalis in the Bronx, across the street from Yankee Stadium. And I saw these guys, you know, jumping in the air and flying across, and I was like, wow, I was like, I'm gonna come back here tomorrow. I went back there and I skated for a while, a lot of times by myself, even though there were rollerbladers there. And then when I finally fessed it up to like have a conversation with them, they were like, yeah, we're going street skating. And I was like, hey, can I join you? And he was like, no, you're not good enough and you're a park rat. This is the first time I hear this stuff. So, you know, I'm like, what is a park rat? I didn't know what a park rat was at that moment. And I found out, you know, it's a person that only skates park. And I was like, that's not true of me. I started skating in the streets. You know, I didn't know it was called street skating. And me coming from my side, I'm very competitive in everything. If you play me in checkers, I'm trying to kill you. If you play me in chess, I'm one of those people. So for me hearing that, I said, you know what? Okay, since I'm not cool enough and I'm not good enough, I'm gonna become better than all of you. So I took the first 2-3 years to skate really hard, like, and not for money and not for anything, just because I'm that competitive. And then to see the same people come back and want to skate with me and say, oh, I knew you was gonna make it. You're amazing. We always loved your skating. I said, wow, but you were the person that wouldn't allow me to skate with the crew. So I was excited about that. But at the same time, from them doing that to me at that age, I made a vow that I would never skate with people that only skate with people because of how good they are. And if you go online, you could hit all my, I know, shout out to Be Free, shout out to Ray, you guys have, your schools. I got my school too, but it's in the streets. I teach over like 35 kids around my neighborhood to skate every other day. And they love me for that because I don't judge them. I want them to know that they need to have fun first, enjoy what they're doing. Don't worry about that outside stuff. All that stuff, it comes to you if it's gonna come. But what we need to do is we really need to create forums and have conversations with a lot of people, because it still goes on to this day. Even when I've actually stepped back in skating these past few years because of that that issue. That issue is very major to me because the inclusion, it doesn't make sense to me. At the end of the day, like B Free said, someone judges someone because it's not exactly what they do. And I don't think that's fair, because you have to look at everything like art. Like, you'll meet 100 different artists. When I mean art, like painters, 100 different styles. Well, because you like them to do their strokes like this, and this person does the strokes like this, it makes it different, and you have to separate it. I don't think it's not necessary. So we need to teach that is ignorant. That's a very high ignorance. Skating is supposed to be something that you come together and enjoy and progress together. Like me growing up with Rafael Herrera, when we first started skating, we didn't even know the name of any tricks. We saw the footwork, we saw how one leg went like this, one leg went like this, and we just copied it, and we just kept going and going and going. And we allowed any person that was willing to skate with us to be down, hang out, and just have a good time. And I think the problem with a lot of the skaters nowadays is because when they get into skating, the first thing they start they're taught about is sponsorship. So then that kid goes, oh, I need to be sponsored. I need to be sponsored. So they don't work on the craft, and they work on being around the cool guys and making themselves seem like the cool guy, and then push everyone else to the side to make it seem like, hey, we're the cool guys. We're who you need to see and know about, and everyone else doesn't matter. And I don't think that's fair. And that doesn't. And those are the same people that will say, oh, there's not a lot of skaters out here. It's not a lot of skaters because every time the skaters come around you, you give them the energy that you kind of don't want them around you. So then the skate parks are empty. There's no rollerbladers in the skate parks no more. There's no rollerbladers wanting to go to random locations to meet up. And I know all of us kind of go through that too. If you go to a random spot once in a while, a random skate park, you probably not see anybody. And it's created because of the energy of how other people, like Be Free said, like some kids are coming to a park and like they don't know how to do something, and they might want to ask one of the guys, but because the energy they give off to them, which I'm very into energy. Energy means a lot. People, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. It's just when you walk in somewhere, a lot of people that's really about energy, they can feel how you feel. Like, they're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna stand over him because he has this energy of like, don't bother me. And we need to all really sit down and come back together and be as one, because that was what I saw when I first started skating. Besides that little incident, the other people that I met, they just was like, oh, you got skates on? Or I got skates on? Let's skate. You know what I mean?
And that's the way really that it should be, right? But to
Right.
Ramel's point, I think that there is an element of exclusionary to some degree. Like I call it like the cooler than thou thing that exists in action sports. Is like everybody wants to be cooler than the next person, which is like, to me quite silly. But Caleb and or Michaela, I wonder on what your thoughts are respectively on like, what can we all do collectively to be more inclusionary, to be more welcoming and open as a culture, as a sport, as a community?
I don't know if Michaela wants to go first or not.
You can go first. I'm trying to formulate some sentences.
Definitely, I was thinking about what Reese said earlier about how I think it starts as one, we have to think about how small our community is. I mean, speaking directly in terms of like the aggressive community, I will say that factor of raising the cool guys to the top who have the technical skills, like I understand them having the technical skills is what makes them, in most people's eyes, a good rollerblader. But I also agree that we did that with some people who didn't necessarily have the right personalities or the open-minded and open-spiritedness that we needed to see in those leader roles. And I know it's weird for me. I have a different perspective growing up in the Midwest. I feel like I was kind of secluded. I didn't really know a lot about the East Coast or the West Coast blade scenes. I personally kind of missed out on a lot of the I got into following skate videos later and learning about the industry later than what I think a lot of skaters who've been skating as long as we did. But I definitely see that we started our industry out and we were small. We didn't know what we were doing. And with that collapse, that happened a while back, we were reaching out to try to figure out who we were. And obviously in a sport that is first framed up as a extreme sport, a technical sport, we're obviously going to look to the athletes who have the technical skill. But I think that really did long-term damage by not giving us, we didn't have a wide pool of people to say, hey, this person is doing all of this other stuff in the community besides being such an awesome technical skater. And I think, obviously starting with these conversations, obviously with our scene maturing, as we've gone through multiple generations of skaters, and a lot of us are maturing into older ages, and we're the ones of us who still skate and look back on it now and say, hey, we don't like how that was. How can we change it? And so having these conversations obviously is the way to do that. Definitely doing our best to highlight members of the community more based on what's going to be a community factor about them. having like, one of the biggest things I've noticed, especially in the last 5 years, is there's like the people separate the communities of skating really harshly. There's the aggressive community, slalom community. I'm like lumped in this distance community, and I like to call it rollerblading. I'm just going rollerblading. It doesn't matter if I'm gonna grind a thing or air a thing or skate far. It's just rollerblading. And I think doing that has really helped me to break down the idea of like, well, what is a professional rollerblader or a good rollerblader or someone in our community that's doing something? And you guys, most of you probably know Sonic, right? I feel like Sonic's a member of the skate community. He does an aggressive skate, but I, as a person who's aggressive skated my whole life, I see him as someone who I would like to see on top of our community, making more influential decisions with resources from companies and resources from our community, because he's a skater that like reaches out and does more and is inspirational and is like good character, good standing, you know what I mean? And so I think finding people like him, obviously, Be Free, you're a huge part of this movement of like, you know, you're a longtime skater, but now you're like reaching backwards and you're giving your energy back to shape the future community. And I think we just need to find more skaters like that, amplify them, give them the opportunities to make this change. I never know if we're specifically talking about the aggressive community or skating community as a whole. Because the aggressive community does happen to be this like hard-headed, thick-skulled community of like, I mean, I know a lot of the people I grew up with it was about being the best, doing the trick. You got to get the trick. And I think that mentality took over every aspect of the community. Or not every aspect, but took over a lot of like this being the best thing. I think we're all just going to kind of keep coming back to that. But I know the drive for me when I was younger was I wanted to be the best. Me and my homies were like, who's going to get this rail first kind of thing. And then as our friends dwindled and our groups got small, that's when we finally started to realize like, well, let's help each other out. Like, there's not enough of us anymore. Now it's me and you doing all this work when we could have a whole community of people around us, knowing where the spots are, being able to host them, you know, teaching. Obviously, everybody has their own style, teaching in different styles. And I feel like that for a lot of skaters was a detriment to lose out on having more skaters. The more skaters, the more you experience, the more you're going to learn, the better your skating is going to be, if that makes sense. And so when we like, this is aggressive, this is not, or like start to categorize groups, or like this person's good and this person's not, like even if a person's really good and they think they shouldn't skate with someone who's not as good as them, that person might be doing one thing that they, you know, can learn from. And then they both grow and learn together. Does that make sense? And I feel like ego is a huge part of the aggressive community. And I think that's going to be a lot of conversations on how do we remove the ego from aggressive skating? How do we remove the masculinity and the goal-oriented? I don't want to say goal-oriented because having goals is good, but like the finality of doing the thing. Does that make sense? Instead of just the art of just skating is like, I put my skates on, you're 100% doing the thing right in there. And people should, I think when you tell your brain that, oh, this isn't doing the thing unless I'm doing this to an extreme degree, exactly in this precise way that other people agree is the right way to do it. But really just the act of your own body doing it, you should be elated. You should feel the feelings of like, I'm doing this. But it becomes too much of, you know, everybody says this is the one way to do it. So if you're not doing it that way, you're not it. And so I think, I mean, it's a whole conversation about the sport. I'll ramble on. I'm sorry. Let me stop there. Michaela, you go.
It's beautiful. I think, and Michaela, definitely want to give you, you know, allow you to jump in there. But the one thing that I did want to share that I think Caleb hit right on the button for me is like, firstly, I just think we've had an identity problem for a long time. Like, what the hell is the name of what we do? What is it? Rollerblading, inline skating, whatever. I personally call what the aggressive skate side rollerblading, because It might be one of the few things I agree with Arlo on, but certainly call it rollerblading, and then everything else comes from inline skating. You know, like as the whole for inline skating, but we've always been we're birthed from that, we're part of that, but we don't align with that. We really haven't for a long time, and that's why, you know, big wheel skating, urban skating, and what you're doing, Caleb, I think is creates an age, right, as we get older and we're exploring more ways to have fun. I think that that's a really an eye opener for a lot of people in terms of like expanding their joy and love for skating, or just plainly having skates on your feet, right? There's more things that you can do with it, right? Distance slalom, all of that stuff. But Michaela, I'm curious to know your thoughts on this point.
I was listening to everybody and I had like 4 things, and then like I'm kind of at a loss of words, but when we were talking about kids at skate parks and being inclusive,
Can
one
I
thing,
ask a question if you want?
yeah, if you want to ask, I was just gonna,
Yeah.
I had a couple of things I was thinking, but yeah, ask questions.
Well, so in regards to, because we were talking about inclusion, right? And the inclusion part, and I think that, you know, that you come from a space where you have a certain experience. Michaela just celebrated her legal name change, so I just want to applaud that if
Hell
that's
yeah.
okay, Michaela.
Yeah, so
You know, but so you know,
yeah.
but like maybe describe that, like, you know, what, how can we be more tolerant, acceptant, like have those different you know, be more open instead of, because for me the takeaway is when we're talking about exclusion, there's a very exclusionary thing, like Ramel talked about. There's an exclusionary component that's very evident, right? Like how do we dismantle that?
Well, I mean, there's so many different ways to look at it. So as a visible queer person, I think individually people need to be more accepting of queer people, and also just kind of, you know, not talk under their breath about queer people, which generally don't, but sometimes they do, speaking along what you're talking about there. But I think just, you know, having someone to look up to, you know. So like I was just gonna mention, I was at a skate park recently. There was like a dad had his kids, you know, and like this one little girl, she had a skateboard, right? And then she saw a few of us rollerblading, right? She seen 2 girls rollerblading, and she put her rollerblades on and she just skated circles around the outside of the park, you know. And then I made sure to say hello, are you enjoying rollerblading? And she just kept on skating, you know. And so like that's that, you know, having someone to see makes you feel like you can join in, you know. I think language is a big thing, but sometimes it's kind of hard to, you don't want to be language police, but at the same time, like there are things that turn people away from skating, especially if they're not like experienced in it or they're new to it. I don't know. I'm drawing blanks. I'm just drawing blanks right now. I don't know why. I can't even think.
If I can tag on to what Michaela just said about language.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how many bad words we can use on this, but there are a few common ones that you will hear at every skate session, like don't bitch out, stop being a pussy. That language has always bothered the hell out of me. And yet,
For sure.
you know, if I wanted to skate, I had to deal with it. If I wanted to, you know, have the quote unquote security of being in a group, because again, I am a woman, I am small, it's not safe for me to skate alone. I don't feel safe. And so then that was kind of like the price to pay too, is like dealing with these misogynist comments, this misogynist language that's kind of really deep in rollerblading culture.
It is, and it's also very ableist too, like you had mentioned earlier. Like you had said something earlier about, you know, your abilities are different, and we as a community need to be accepting of that type of stuff. As long as you have wheels on your feet and you're skating, like, yeah, you're skating, you're doing it, right? And so language like that, when you think about it, like it puts two things together that shouldn't belong, right? So like if you're the type of person and maybe your stamina is super low because you have asthma, and then so like you do one trick and you're winded and this and that, and someone starts getting on you for it, like, yo, quit being a wuss, or things like that. Like, no, I actually have a condition.
Yeah.
And so like that's a turn off for one. Or like, I mean, what if someone has like, well, if someone's never jumped on a handrail before, and like, yeah, you want to help them jump on the handrail, but then like maybe eventually it's like, no, you just can't do it. I just can't jump high enough. Like I've never skated a handrail. I cannot jump high enough. And like if I ever go to a handrail and someone was like, yo, come on, just do it, I'm like, yo, I'm just gonna go skate the ledge, because like I just can't jump high enough. Like I can keep trying, but like at some point, like I want to have fun when I have skates on my feet, and so having fun with skates on my feet means, if you're gonna be a shit talker, like I don't want to be around that. But I like when my friends boost me. Like I want to be supportive of my friends and stuff. But like I think we as a culture probably need to know when it might be time to turn that off a little bit. Turn the volume down a little bit, if that makes any sense.
And if I can jump in there, Michaela, be okay to check each other. Case in point.
Oh yeah, of course.
You, Philip Moore, and I were having a conversation the other day. I got a little heated, and I said whatever, something, be a pussy, like, and then you called me out on that, and I was like, thank you, because there's language is so important, and it's so embedded in our vernaculars for so long, right?
Just being respectful, you know what I mean? Like calling somebody the N-word, you know what I mean? And
yes, and the T word, honestly. I mean, I'm not gonna go into it, but
the thing too, and the people you surround yourself with, people's colors will come out, and sometimes you do need to check those people, you know what I mean? Like that should be something that if you feel that, uncomfortable in any time, like definitely speak on that, you know what I mean? Like you shouldn't just be bathing and being uncomfortable. Like as soon as you feel that way, you should definitely speak up. That's always something you should do. We all have the right to do that, so there's certain types of people can speak up, it's not everybody. You got a mouth, you can talk, what I mean? That's the way to do it. Language is always a thing that's key. I think a lot of people get so stuck in old ways and stuff that they are blind to their ignorance around for that stuff, you know what I mean? And so you do have to remind people, like, hey, like, don't say that. Like, it's a transition I think the whole world is going through right now too. It's getting more, it's not crazy, like good example, like we just got these children books for my daughter, and they have all these different kind of books that start talking about pronunciations and what people want to be called. So it's cool to be able to see the transition to seeing like kid books like that, you know what I mean? So I think just more dialogue, more communication, more information, that's the best that we can do. And especially being that we skate, that the skating stuff is just the tip of the iceberg. It's just the tool. Everything else is what matters. That's your real life situations. Like you're a person. You're it's not just the object on your feet that's making you this person, but it's everything else too. So that should never change, no matter what. So people's attitudes and personas and egos and things like that. Like there shouldn't be any space and room for that. Because that's just wasting time. You know, I mean, we're only here on this earth for so long, man. Like everyone should be getting it and being on that vibe and lifting people and not trying to degrade anybody. Like that's not doing anybody any good. You know what I mean? And for us to keep teaching that, and especially the youth coming up, like that's important. You know what I'm saying? Because they're going to be the ones that are going to be the shape. They're not going to be, you know, we'll be the ones that they mentioned back in the day, but like they're going to be the ones in the forefront too. So like, you know, thinking in that aspect for the future, you know. So we gotta want,
Go ahead,
you know.
Ramel. I was actually
You
going to
gotta-
ask you a question, Ramel, if you want, if I
Yeah,
can,
yeah.
because
But let me just say this
a
real
lot
quick
of
though.
what a lot of what we're talking about is, I think, predicated that, and Caleb brought it up earlier, but like the let's face it, let's get some brass tacks here, like toxic masculinity. There is no
A
doubt
lot.
that there's huge amount of toxic masculinity in our sport and in our culture, embedded in our culture, right? So how do we address that, and do away with it?
Well, what I feel like what we're doing now is that we're the first generational sector that's stepping up and saying, "Hey, that's not cool." Remember, I was on the phone with you, Ray, and I was like when we were kids. See, our mothers, our fathers, our grandmothers and grandfathers, those generations from me being at this age now and studying them, they always stayed quiet. So if you were young, when I was young and I like fell or something, it hurt my hand and I cried, my mother, my father, my grandfather, they would say, "Stop crying. Why are you acting like a bitch?" So I knew that was wrong the whole time. So now at this age, like I tell my sons, it's all right to cry. It's all right to be vulnerable. It doesn't make you weak. It actually makes you stronger, because these people out here that think they're so tough, they can't succumb and listen to somebody or just be emotional, or they may disrespect somebody and they think, and then if someone says, "Hey, you're wrong for saying that," they flip out and they turn it to something else. But the people are right. You can't, like, we're getting to a point now where people are saying, "Hey, man, that's not cool, man. Like, that's not cool. You're violating someone as a person and their rights, and we're not fond of it." And I know that's how I feel. You know, I have
Yeah.
friends that are still homophobic and still have these issues. We walking down the street and, you know, a transgender walk by and they, "Oh my God." And I'm like, where did that come from? Like, what do you, like, to me, it bothers me because it says, that shows to me that you're not 100% with yourself. That someone else actions or how they live and how they follow things in their life bother you. But I feel like what we're doing in these past few years is that we are really, you know, talking to the kids and even speaking to our older generations, our mothers and fathers, and we're saying, "Hey, that enough is enough." Like, we're in a world now where we need to express ourselves, and we also need to respect one another.
We're gonna lead by
So
example. We're gonna lead by example.
we're leading by example right now.
Mhm.
Jump
Yeah,
in.
well, that's
You know, I don't
so
let my son say no derogatory things. They can't. No, we don't do that. We respect everybody for what they are and what they're about.
yeah, I was just gonna mention the one word is, I think in our generation, like our generation is changing, you know, because we grew up with that type of stuff. And then like what also we now are moving towards vulnerability in our communities and in society. We're moving towards, you know, we're moving away from this quote unquote tough love type of thing and into more nurturing love, you know.
Right.
Like nurturing is something that we you know, I think that's more of a call in than a call out, you know, is being
Yeah.
nurturing and giving people space to be them, you know. And so
Absolutely.
yeah, and like so using transphobic language and homophobic language is gotta go.
It's
Like
gotta go. Absolutely.
it's gotta go. Like there's still people that call stuff gay, you know. And I know I talked to Grant Hamilton quite a bit here and there. And I know that he experiences it. There's been times where I still see, like, there generally is a lot more skateboarders and stuff around me, but I still hear people calling ramp skating and transition skating tranny skating, and it's disgusting. you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, come on, really? Like, I know what you mean, but it's a derogatory word. We don't have to use that word, you know? It's like, what if a nickname for a table was the N-word? You wouldn't call the table the N-word just because. You'd call it a table because it's a table. So call it a ramp, you know? There's better words for it, you know? So like,
Definitely.
there's that for sure. And that's, I think we as people, like we gotta be encouraging of that, because that's gotta happen. Like, it's like one by one, people have to get on that train, you know? And so
Yeah.
hopefully they got a ticket and hopefully we can stamp it, you know?
Yeah, Caleb or Reese, do you have any notes on that? Any thoughts?
Yeah, kind of tying all that back to what you said earlier about checking each other. I think that might be really, really important to become more normalized and to kind of get people on board with all of these things that Ramel is saying, that Beef is saying, that Michaela is saying, you know, changing language, changing just kind of outlooks. I know I've experienced a lot of a lack of willingness in the local Blake community to call people out who are clearly behaving badly, you know, and they don't want to do it because either they don't want to get involved or they don't care, or, you know, they just don't see like inclusion and respect as a part of our culture. And so I think we really need to double down on getting people on board with no respect, inclusion, you know, like basic humanity, like let's care about each other as human beings instead of just you're some random person with wheels on your feet that like I only want to talk about skate tricks with. You know, and I mean to you think about that, that's kind of like you're objectifying that person in a way, right? Where like you're only useful if you're not making me feel uncomfortable.
Right. Right. Caleb, do you have any thoughts on that one?
Again, I think it will definitely come back to, I mean, it's gonna obviously start small with these conversations, with us going out and using the right language. And then, you know, I know personally here in Iowa, my community is smaller. I'm one of the older skaters now. So as these young kids are showing up to the skate parks, I have no issue stepping in and saying like, hey, we don't talk like that. Like, but it's much easier for me because I'm the cool older skater now. They look up to me because I've been around and I have the skill. So having that, I guess I would just find that as a privilege because I've acquired the skill. I've you know, acquired the skaters here know me. So it's much easier for me to influence them to say, hey, like, you know, if someone messes something up, we're not going to call that gay. Like, we don't, there's so many other words in the language, English language, to use, but even in that sense, like, never to be derogatory, because like that, I personally, one of my close friends I grew up with skating was always sort of being derogatory towards me, putting down my skating. My skating wasn't quite good enough. And so I made it a personal vendetta to never be that way, to try to uplift anyone, even if whatever their skill level is or what they're trying, to try to uplift them. And so I think us going out in our communities and doing the one-on-one engagement and hopefully infecting each person with that kind of knowledge and where we want to take the language. But also, again, it comes to in our community, and I guess in the pertaining to the aggressive community, lifting people up, the ones we put on the pillars to sort of lead our community. Let's make sure that they are amplified and their voices are the voices using the right language, using the right actions. And I don't know how that works. I don't know how we do that starting here, but definitely having a platform and building it big enough to have a sway in our community and to say, hey, these things need to change. These people on the top, maybe they're good, but their language isn't the language we want representing us. And having like proper representation for for the community we want, because we're not going to bring in the people we want, and we're not going to shape the newcomers into the type of community we want unless the pillars of our community are screaming out the values that we want. Does that make sense?
It does. And you know, the thing that resonates with me so much, everyone, that Caleb just shared, and thank you for that. It's a responsibility. It's a responsibility. Right. We all share in that collective responsibility to hold folks in our community to account, right? There's an incredible, I find, like lack of accountability. I think Dominic Zagona wrote me a note the other day. He was like, "What do you expect, dude? It's the interwebs, like you know, just things online, right?" Because there is that component of non-accountability when people just keyboard hero, right, like typing things online. But it is, I think, in the greater construct of that, that we hold each other to account, even if it's just a one-to-one. In the instance, and good on you, Caleb, for being that. It's funny to hear you say you're the older guy at the skate park. I think that's pretty funny. I just turned 46, so I think I'm the older guy doing that now. But yeah, so accountability, and it is a responsibility that we have individually and communally, right, to make that all happen. One of the things that I'm taking some notes here as we go, and I don't want to take too much more of your time, but you know, going back to the earlier topics, I think Ramel shared something. It was actually recent too, but like someone to look up to, right? Like people that look like me. And so when we're talking about like diversity in a culture, I think that's something that's really important. I mean, in anything that we do, especially in sport, right? We have these amazing folks all across the board in all kinds of sports. And we know that like when a kid sees someone, like an athlete in particular, and they identify with that athlete, they go, "Oh, wow, I can do that too," right? And so I would love for you all to maybe talk about that a little bit. And like, you know, a question that I do have, it's like, is our culture really diverse, right? Like, I think, like, for example, I'll give you a perfect case in point. Like, Ramel and I come from New York City. New York City is one of the most diverse places in the United States, maybe in the planet Earth. So is the rollerblading community in New York City diverse? Yeah, it is, because we have a plethora, we have a melting pot here. But like at large, globally, big scope, is rollerblading diverse? And then what can we do to make it potentially more diverse?
I'm just going to weigh in real quick. Just real quick to go back, I think what Caleb was mentioning about being in a small town. So like where I live there's not a lot of rollerbladers here. I mean, I see some people rollerblading on the street once in a while, but generally it's just me and a few of our friends. And something just kind of stuck out. It's just so funny because it's being in a small niche local group is equally a blessing as it is a curse. It's equally a privilege as it is a curse, because like I have really good friendships with the people that I rollerblade with, and there's really nobody new coming in as of right now, you know. So like it's a blessing because like I have good relationships with these people. We really don't ever have these issues where we have to have these one-on-one conversations. It's like extremely tough, but at the same time it's a curse because it's like, oh well, our growth, like our personal growth may be stunted, you know, sometimes.
Yeah.
Not saying that as a bad thing, you know, because it means like, hey, you know what, we're all super loving and accepting, you know. So like my group of people, there's me, my friend who lives really close to me, like we're queer people pretty openly, you know. There's some white folks, you know, there's some Puerto Ricans, you know, and like it's only like 8 or 9 of us really, but like it's a diverse group and we're all super, you know, respectful to each other, you know. And so yeah, it's a blessing and a curse. But is the community diverse? I think the community is diverse, but I think that if you look at the media, it's kind of not, you know.
I think maybe,
So
Michaela, you and I don't mean to interrupt, but
Mhm.
you made me just think of a prompt, right? Like, so you all probably know that I started this this petition a while back, and Caleb was
Mhm.
actually one of the first people to sign it. Thank you, Caleb, and for actually explaining why. And it wasn't necessarily like me trying to like go on a rant. It was more like, again, accountability, like holding to account. And it was a incredible learning process for me, because I got like over 200 comments about this thing, right? And the majority of them broke it down to this. Like I was saying, hey, our community can be more diverse, right? Like here's this whole thing, like the diversity, equity, and inclusion, and this is what we'd like to see. And what I got back from that was black, white, racist. I got like the that position of thing. It was like it instantly turned into like from a plea maybe, or a statement about creating a more diverse, robust culture, to making it like a black versus white thing, or you're calling me a racist. And I didn't say any of those things. I didn't say any black versus white, or I didn't call anybody a racist, but that was the sort of takeaway from that all. And you know, and I think that that's sort of what we're faced in the world in general, especially in the US, right? When you raise these issues, there's sort of that immediate like pushback that you get because people feel threatened. I wonder if you had any thoughts on that. Reese, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think people who are uncomfortable with having to address these issues, they kind of take it as an attack instead of an invitation to have a discussion. So there's this kind of like knee-jerk reaction, this kind of defensiveness that you experienced on that thread, right? And that's something that, you know, like all these other things we're talking about, we need to talk about more. We need to, you know, somehow get the message across that this is not an attack. This is about building bridges. This isn't about trying to make someone this or that. It's about trying to bring people together. And so I personally have experienced something similar to that with some people I know who, you know, their position of privilege led them to see a discussion about their actions as an attack instead of, you know, what it really was, which was a discussion from a friend. So yeah, that's a hard one because there's such strong, and again, it's like a knee-jerk thing too. It's hard to get around that.
Yeah, Caleb, I wonder. Yeah, please.
I think one of the a big issue, especially, I think one of the main reasons you probably had a lot of reactions like that is because I think personally, I have experienced this feeling, but in rollerblading, there seems to be this fear of scarcity of resources, widespread across our community. It goes back, you know, even to like, am I a skater that will be sponsored? Can I be good enough to be sponsored? Nobody's good enough to be sponsored. You'll never be sponsored. That whole kind of thing. There's a lot of scarcity in blading. And so I think when you say something like, oh, we want things to change, a lot of people, their first thought on change is losing something, which might be a resource or a possible resource. So a lot of people get scared because they don't want things to change because they're going to lose out on that. I know race definitely will play a large issue in that. I'm still trying to dissect that, and I'm on that journey myself. But I think a lot of white skaters are probably really worried about the idea of a community that's already so small, trying to take light and give it to other members of the community. And I think that that will be just, I don't know how we change that other than by doing it and then allowing skaters to see that it will be a healthy thing for our community. It to diversify, we talked about it earlier, to diversify our community will ultimately enrich it and strengthen it. And I think right now it's small and it's fragile. Even though we're on the skating's on a come up, it's on a rise right now, we're still in this scarcity mentality. Our sport always has. We've always been, earlier you said black sheep, or you know, we're the odd characters out. And I think that's created this scarcity mindset for skaters. That's a driver to be good, is the scarcity mindset. I'm not good enough, I need to be better, so let me work at this being better. So I think that's probably one of, you know, that's playing into the reason why so many people like immediately backlashed it, because we haven't had these conversations. Nobody's really said something like that. And I ride for rollerblade. I'm sure you guys, some of you guys know that. And when I saw that, I immediately even though I ride for them, I completely agree with you and understand what you're trying to do, because I have somewhat of the insight inside the skating community. I have being sponsored for rollerblade. My partner works for a skate company, a roller skate company. So I know how the business side of companies work, and I know what's been happening since COVID, and I know all this money is coming in, and I know that these companies, this right now is an opportunity for companies to redo the roots they have, to redo the foundation that they have, because ultimately companies, they are a lifeblood of our community. Without companies, we don't have skates. We're not skating. We're not I don't want to say we're not a community because of that, because the skates aren't what make us the community, but the skates are what brought us to this community. And so these companies are sponsoring the riders, creating the product. They have a large, to an extent, they have a large control of the finances of our industry. And I know for aggressive skating, it's been so much underground, so much skaters funding skaters and small projects and things like that. But there's still the underlying thing of these bigger companies, especially now in this huge wave of income, of influx of new skaters. Companies are still like struggling to keep in stock. That's money flowing in. And there's an opportunity right now that we might not have for long. Maybe this is a bubble that's going to pop. Maybe it's not. Maybe this is our opportunity to redesign the system that is the, I'm tripping up on words, to redesign the system, to redesign the way our community is founded, so that way it's not a bubble, it doesn't pop. It's a continual flow of new skaters coming in, feeling welcomed, learning to express themselves, and then they go on and they spread that and they spread that. And it's not so much like small scarcity, only the best are here, you can't be here if you're not good enough. And so there's so much room. Anybody, if we are inclusive and we bring everybody in, you can still be an awesome skater and you can take your skating as far as you want it. And odds are you're going to have many more resources, the more people in your community, the more people there to support. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like so many rollerbladers are stuck in this scarcity mindset. Yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
I think that's brilliant. I mean, I just want, on a personal note, man, I just really want to thank you for your bravery, for being so brave and stepping up and voicing what you just did, but by signing that petition, because that's really what we're asking, and very much what you just so eloquently said was really the precipice for all of that. And I totally agree with you. And that although I think we could talk about this, but that's a perfect segue that you gave to the equity part of this conversation. And exactly what you said, it is like, for example, this is a watershed, for lack of a better term, moment in the industry, right? There's an influx of funds and all that stuff. So in the notes I wrote to y'all, it's like addressing the wealth gap, right? Why do the brands make all the money and the athletes are not compensated accordingly? Firstly, why don't pro skaters, professional athletes get paid a living wage? Like, and I've had conversations with you guys separately. Why are pro skaters moonlighting as pro skaters? Because they either work at Amazon or they do deliveries or they do whatever else it is that they have to do to make money, and then they're pro skater like on their spare time. You know what I mean? And so that's something that I'd love for us to discuss, is the equity part of the conversation, because I think equally that's very important. And I'll just say this, I'll leave you guys with this. My personal, like being in this industry for 30 years almost, I've noticed that there's a very abusive relationship when it comes to brands and athletes, right? Ramel and I were talking about it earlier. It's like you give someone a pair of skates and a t-shirt and they like fall over themselves to like, you know, be at your beck and call. So I'd love to know everyone's thoughts on the equity part of that.
So before you go into equity, I just want to say something about the diversity. There's no the diversity in skating is very small. We have to be honest. In New York, we have a big. It looks amazing here in New York, but when we look out the outside, there's really no diversity. I skated for rollerblade back in, what was that, Ray? When they did the Access, what, 2004?
Yeah.
I probably skated there for about 5-6 years.
Yeah.
When they was doing the Access, I was on their team. It was a great time for a while. Of course, for me being there as a foundational Black man skater, so I was like, cool, but it was no diversity. Unfortunately, it wasn't. It was seeing the same thing, and the outcomes weren't as great. And then also being involved in the business and seeing the other pro skaters, which I won't say their names, but when the kids come up to them and want to show them love, they kind of like, I'm tired of being here. Like, you know, it was. I saw a lot of stuff that was like, oh, come on, man. Like, you have a great opportunity in front of you. We can make this bigger than what it is. And we can also grab the community and have everyone just involved and make it bigger than what it is. I started skating right when 2000 started. And from that time to now, it went in reverse. Even with skating and just equity, when I first got into skating, the third, fourth year turned pro, and off of just side deals and speaking with people, I made $200,000 in a contract. Then I went on to be one of the first rollerbladers for Red Bull, and then I switched and I went on a Mountain Dew tour, which I was the only rollerblader to have an actual contract with
I met you at the Ball for Real tour.
You remember Big Free? We linked up too.
That was like one of my first
33
or second
states. Yeah, 33 states in 2.5 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
Amazing. And I saw a lot of things that occurred. Yeah, 33 states, 3 months, made $9 million. But I don't see that stuff anymore. You know what I mean? I remember back then, like up talks right now, diversity. I miss having a magazine. I miss going to the store and picking up a magazine, but I'm not gonna go too deep into that. But from me seeing it from at the time that was beginning to me, and then seeing people like Ray Mendez, of course, and the other issue I felt like the diversity died, and I'm not trying to point fingers at people, but I'm saying, where's the rest of the Ray Mendezes? Like when I got into skating, I saw you, Ray. You was one. We don't exactly look the same, but I know we come from the same background. So I identified with you instantly.
Yeah.
In 2021, I say most of the people in your generation of when y'all was doing, they're not around. Like, remember, we was at your house in the backyard and like Ozzy and Nene and them were there. And nobody knew who they were, right? Till they walked off, and I had to like break down the mathematics to who they are, what they've done. And they was doing that before I even started skating. It's just me. I edify myself. I need to know what was before me, and I need to know what's after me. That's always been my mindset. I feel like I don't even want to name companies, but okay. I see Rollerblade has a few people, and I see a couple new guys on it, which is great, and I'm happy. But then I also know the business side, and I know people ain't making money. Now, I work in marketing and stuff right now, so I do a lot of research on the back end of companies, and I see how much money they make, how much they price their stuff out, and how much income comes in. And then I see my pro skaters, and I'm like, where it doesn't make sense. I feel like you said, rollerblade. All my friends that are still pro or trying to be pro or amps, they're moonlighting as skaters, but they're bartenders and they're, architects and designers, whatever. They're doing other things, but you're doing that, but you're a pro skater. The definition of professional means that you are in something that you do, and you're very talented and great at it, but you get paid for it. That's what a professional. It doesn't matter. You could be a professional beatboxer, professional coin flipper. They make money doing it. That's what it means. And I would love to see these owners of these companies come out too and speak on them, because I've talked to I don't want to say names. I've talked to like about 3 companies in the past couple of weeks, and they say, "Oh, I don't have budgets for these guys, and I don't have this." And I go, like, I know what you make. Like, I could really, like, I don't want to do that right now, but I could show you guys, like, look at their last year revenue, and look at Rollerbladers at a 300% rise this year. And right or wrong, right, Caleb?
They've been at that for like a minute.
For a minute, but
raking
when
it
daily
in for a
news,
minute.
but when the publications start to say, "Hey, look, we see you guys making a lot of money over there." If you go Google, you type in, look at it, like it's so many publications within the past 2-3 months of companies, well, rollerblade, and their spike in inline skating, especially in America, and due to COVID and people not wanting to get on public transportation and trains and whatnot, everyone has resorted back to rollerblades, which is amazing. But why is it that the professionals in the sport, why is nobody getting paid anymore? I used to get, when we were young, we would sign contracts with companies and you would get paid just to have a photo in a magazine. Like, incentives. Hey, if you just go to this event and smile and take a photo, you're gonna get paid this. If you get one page in a magazine, if you get a small photo, you get this. If you get a full page, you get this. If you get a double spread, you get this. Like, I don't see anything. And like I was telling Ray, the problem is too, it's like with skating, it's wrong to tell the truth and blading for some reason now. It's like, which is great that we're all sitting here having this conversation, because it seems like, how do I explain it? It's wrong to tell the truth nowadays. It's okay to butter it up and make it seem like something, but when it's real, it is what it is. Like Ray, you said, I read the discussion you posted, and as I read every single comment, I just saw people. It was separatism. It was white people. It was black people. It was everyone started trying to separate themselves. Like, oh, this is going on. Well, this is this and this is that. And I was like, what happened to the only time this year that I seen all the bladers come together was when the YouTube put up, what sport should we put in the X Games? Oh, we a community now. We're a community now for the X Games. Soon as that died out, everyone just went back their own ways again. Like, we have to figure that out. Like, why is that always occurring? But my fault. I know you're going into equity. I just wanted to explain that. We need more diversity. Rosie's team has like 30 rollerbladers. I'm not gonna go into that. I was not shout out to Rosie. I have love for them, but like the group that I saw in the photo looked like the same exact kids.
Right. And I think that's the point where when you talk about diversity, I mean, that's really important in sports for especially for young people to have, folks that look like them, right? That you identify with that. So I think in part in the broader scope of all of that, we can just do a better job, and that doesn't necessarily is not predicated on race. That's also
right.
predicated on like who those people are. They are female, or they exist in the LGBTQIA spectrum, or whatever that is, right? Like that we are more diverse and inclusive as a whole. We're running a
I
little.
was
Go ahead.
I was gonna mention real quick because Ramil touched on a couple things. Like you said, you got paid to take a picture. And like these companies are making all this money. So like a couple points. One, there's no budget. Make a budget.
Make a
Right?
budget, right?
Make a budget, because that's part of your budgeting. Is overhead is part of your budget. It's not just your power and water bill. It's the people doing the work for you.
And mind you, not to cut you off, Michaela, but this blading is the one sport that sells on its own in a grassroots sense. There's no marketing, there's no commercials, there's no
social
advertising.
Media.
It's all word of mouth.
Yeah.
And someone says, hey, this guy got a skate coming out, this guy got a skate coming out, and you'll see everybody buying it.
Mm-hmm.
So why?
And it sells out.
Like I work in marketing. I work with companies like Louis Vuitton, Fendi, Chanel. I say, look, I want to do a press for you guys in Midtown Manhattan. They go, oh, we'll give you $100,000 for that. That ain't even that's just a put like, and you know how that business goes. That 100,000 don't go to all that. Like, I'm just being honest. Mm-hmm. So why is it in skating? Why can't they just set budgets? This sport has no marketing whatsoever. Yeah. There's no commercials. So
yeah,
I
well,
it's
totally grassroots. Like I mentioned earlier, like the community is diverse, but in media it's not. And unfortunately, I'm not going to retract that statement completely, but media is on ourselves. Like you said it completely right. It's grassroots, right? And I'm not really familiar with the industry side of it, but it's truly grassroots. Like if you have a follower base, then and you may not quote unquote rep a brand, but maybe you wear a certain pair of skates. Like I have just over 1,000 followers. There's 1,000 people that may see my content that might go out and buy that pair of skates. And I'm not even like, I'm not that great of a skater, but like that kind of goes back to the whole thing about like what we said in the beginning. It's about ableism and stuff like that. And we can kind of see right now, is more or less, as I was just going to quickly get at, is you don't have to be an amazing skater to sell product. You don't have to do the big drop rails to sell product.
Not to cut you off, but it's very important too for us skaters too to be able to be business savvy for those things to happen. Because a lot of times these kids have no idea about contracts or about per diems or any of these things with business terms until it's either too late or they've already, they got the free skates and then the kids skating the skates and people were buying skates because they saw that kid have the skates, but then there was nothing set up in that structure for them to be able to capitalize on that or be able to learn about any of that. So that's a big part in our culture, being able to educate what's going on, and be able to help you see about that. If that's the lane that you want to go, there's the options in skating, right? When you get to start skating, maybe the sponsor stuff is not what you want to do. Maybe you just want to skate, or you're trying to do the torn and film and be that professional skater that you idolize, or that's something that you want to do. But there are those things that you have to be able to realize that make it like a business. It's like you go into work at a 9-to-5 job or some company that you want to work for. There's some kind of goals and things that you have to be able to reach, and those expectations for you to be able to get those, the salaries or the profits from a code or something like that. But it is too for the skater to understand how to be able to be that business and like know a lot of that language. That's another part too with our industry, having that kind of structure with a flow.
I think you're breaking up a little bit.
Like being real companies and being able to work something out where they're able to not only compensate on the gear, been able to give you something to be able to put food on the table, right? So
Definitely.
it's a game of us two knowing what to look for, what to ask, what your expectations are too. So there are these businesses that are major brand businesses that are businesses that really don't have connection with the culture. So you have to be very careful too. Sometimes these businesses make money, they don't have nothing about anything with the culture wise, right? So it's still growing. I feel like this is the time now to make sure we set it up to where the future is going to be able to prosper off that too, where a parent's going to say, oh, my kid is talking about wanting to be a professional skater. And that lifestyle you can make a living off of that, so there's hasn't been a lot of examples of that for us. I mean, there hasn't been like, a lot of that. There hasn't been a lot of examples of people just being able to live solely off of skating, so it took me a long time.
I wanted to just I was just thinking as you were talking, Brian, that I didn't want to like make it sound like I was like looking for a sponsorship, because like that's not me, but I was just more
No,
just making a point about the
not at all.
grassroots. Okay.
No, not at
Yeah,
all.
no,
Not
I
at all.
didn't know if I thought
No,
maybe my
no.
point might have
It's the
been.
biggest thing. Yeah, no worries. Not towards you or anybody. That was just for the vagueness of it, to show you that a lot of kids, when they get into skating, if that is what they want, there is
Losing you.
there's a structure to it. You know what I mean? Like, there has to be a way that everyone can gain that knowledge of how to do it. But yeah, there definitely needs to be change, like what Mel said too. That's something needs to happen. More support on both ends, people meet each other halfway. But yeah, that's one thing I can look forward to in the future, because we want to be able to have a sport where you have the option. You have the option to make that a living, or you have the option of just making skating be fun and something that you just want to do, which they both should be fun, obviously, but having those two options now, because touring and doing all that stuff, that's a real deal thing, you know what I mean? And just hanging out with your friends and skating, and that's a whole different vibe too with it. So you just have to make sure there's those different options that you have. We should be able to provide that, you know what I mean? But yeah, diversity as well too. It needs to be more just cultural awareness of the people too. Like going to Africa was a big deal. That was such a big reflection of being able to look and see people looking just like myself, being able to relate to it, and different cultures too. Like just being able to see that and be mindful of, there's so many people in the world, that skate all over the place. In some places we still are finding out about, so I think the more diversity that we have, the stronger we're going to be. I mean, there's going to be layers and layers and layers and layers of flavor, what I mean? Different kind of skaters all over the place. And for people to see that is one of the strongest things we need to do. And the way to do that is simple. It's the grassroots tours, doing meet and greets where you're showing up to places and being able to have a pair of skates that people can actually try on. All those grassroots things is kind of where we are at now, being able to, the pandemic happening and kind of putting things on hold for a minute. Now us having to adapt to some of that stuff and being able to do these virtual things and being able to do ways to stay, keeping it growing. We're never slowing down the growth of the culture. So the grassroots thing, I think, is something that we really need to, as a whole, these companies, these organizations, businesses, all those things,
Oh, we lost
him.
Yeah, he's.
And everyone, like what he was saying about the grassroots, like I was telling Ray, like what made me stick to skating was when I was young, my first like year or two, rollerblade used to come to my neighborhood and they would bring these big trucks and they would build a roller rink, and they would have more than enough skates for everybody that lived in my neighborhood. And that was 1999, the last time I've seen that. I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm just like, I would love to see these companies get back into the communities, have their skaters traveling and just doing clinics and events and meeting the kids and just, you know, just building the culture to make it more of a family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I can interject, so in my experience in the last two and a half years, my partner, she is working for a roller skate company. You guys probably know Moxie, right? They're owned by Rydell Roller Skates. She's creative director there. So I've gotten intimate with like some of the inside workings of the company. And honestly, what's happening there is very similar to what's happening at Rollerblade. It's very dysfunctional and disorganized. Everybody talks about Rollerblade like they're a corporation. Rollerblade is owned by Technica, which is a larger corporation. Right. I don't think anybody at Technica Rollerblades, I would be surprised. I know that they don't necessarily have there's no passion in rollerblading for the people at Technica. And then for the workers at Rollerblade, you know, you've got your Tom Heisers and Miles and some of those other, you know, Tracy White OG guys, but you've also got a lot of people that don't skate, don't follow skating, don't know about skating. The accountants don't know about skating. The accountants don't know about events. The accountants don't know about sponsorships, about showing your product. And it's just like, there's so much to be said about exactly what Ramel was just talking about. It's like Rollerblade has this ambassador program, but it's like they're sending skates and they're sending shirts. But it's like, why not in every state in the major cities, why don't we get an ambassador? Why don't we get that ambassador a fleet of skates? Why don't we get that ambassador, not just a fleet of skates and a fleet of t-shirts, but the resources to be able to go out into the community, not as I'm going out to sell these skates, but I'm going out to find these skaters. And I've been trying to have conversations with Rollerblade about this idea, because that is like the most grassroots you're going to get. I think about, as far as diversity here in Iowa, we had a huge scene growing up. It was called the Iowa Connection. Huge scene. We would have upwards of like 200 people out at skate park comps, street skating sessions, huge sessions. But I think I can name 3 Black skaters in our group. And so the diversity is small, but the issue is obviously there wasn't the resources in our community for them to stay. They're not still skating. So it's dwindled down. So I'm one of the leaders of my community. How do I personally go out and, you know, I'm not going to be that face that someone relates to, you know, that a small Black child's not going to necessarily relate to me the same way they would for you, Be Free. So that's an issue in and of itself, but also just getting there is an issue. Before I talked with you guys last year, I had a couple conversations with Philip Moore and with Malik about breaking the barrier to entry to skating, because I think that's a huge issue, and there's a lot to be said about not just financially breaking the barrier to entry, but like location wise has a huge effect of that. There's parts of Des Moines where I know that skaters don't go, and I know there's little kids there that don't see skating, and I think about it as maybe one of those kids is meant to be a skater and will do something that changes our community, but how will they ever find skating? They don't have the resources to find skating. But skating does have resources, and we need to be taking those resources and going out and finding the skaters, because that's what's going to keep our industry going, our community going. And so with companies like Rollerblade, there's disorganization. There's just not the connect to the community that there needs to be. When I got sponsored by Rollerblade, I was like, whoa, this is the company, Rollerblade, the company. And I thought it was so cool. But now I see like, it's just a company. And it's a company that in certain ways feels removed from what I have grown to latch onto as what I think rollerblading is. And that's been an eternal.
Same exact experience going with, I don't want to say no names in it, but when going to the place and actually going to the headquarters and like seeing like, you know, like finally kind of like seeing it, like, okay, like getting the idea that not many people there had any idea about just, you know, so it becomes a weird tangle, a weird dance. It's like, you know, with some of those bigger corporations who have the power to be able to make it that big. But at the end of the day, it's really going to be us because we're the ones that create the value as far as that, right? So being able to find and team up with these businesses and companies that actually have someone that's passionate enough to at least get the resources out and be able to try to make that change, at least want to, is really what I want. Just get there halfway at least. And you're right. The different ways to get people to be invited and feel like they can be included in the skating. You know, those demos, you know, we just talked about doing. It doesn't really necessarily matter you know, the skill level, you know, it's just, there's something about a spark, you know, it's like that movie, but it really is something about that energy that you make. And really what it is someone seeing you having fun doing something. That's just,
Exactly.
you know, that feeling is what it is. It's not your skin color. It's not none of this stuff all the time. It's going to be something that they're tuned into. It's like walking down the street and hearing someone play something on the piano or something. You're just like, oh, that's, you know, but you know, we're still developing, you know, we're still, you know, we're not an ancient culture, you know what I'm saying? We're still developing. And I feel like the more things like this, you know, more awareness that we are, the more that we can educate and share that with everybody. I think that's really where we're going. We've had a taste of all those other things. We've had a taste of the limelight. We've been, you know, the movies, we've done the music stuff, we've done all now get this pavement, this solid road built for us to be able to keep going in the future. You know what I mean? So, you know, it's about now. You know, it's about now thinking about what's gonna happen. You know, so we've got a taste from the past. Let's try to like not dwell on it. You know, even from all the name calling stuff and everything. Like us being able to be proud of what we do. You know, that's a big thing too for like kids that are in school now, or like I guess before the pandemic where they're actually in school and maybe the only rollerblader, you know, the only, what's up, Chris? The only rollerblader at their school and have that feeling like I'm the only one that skates, you know, that where it came back to. I'm not sure if a lot of you guys were the only skater at your school at that time, but I was definitely one of the skaters at that time, minus a couple of people that were skating. Shout out to my homie Dorian. But yeah, it's like, we are just growing. It's like literally planting seeds, watering them and still watering them and nurturing them and then getting to the point where they let them do their thing. But we got to be that support, you know what I mean? This is what's going to carry us into the future. You know what I'm saying? I want to be able to see skating in like another 50 years, 100 years. Imagine what that's going to be like, you know, even from the designs of skates to just everything, you know what I mean? So we have to be more just together. That togetherness is really important, you know what I mean? From building from diversity to the equity to not being inclusive to being able to make it something that you will be proud to tell your kids. You know, I've had a totally different perspective of skating since I became a father. You know, it completely changed, you know what I mean? So you know, you really want to make something that's gonna last, you know, and we have to do this to make it do that, you know. So yeah. I don't mean to be rude. I have to cut really quick, but I hope you guys do this again and you let me know when you do this race. So I can jump in here. But yeah, man, I wanna yeah, thank you for doing this, man. This is really sick. And everybody who helped put this together. I don't know if it was just you, Ray, but if everybody did this, that's awesome. I appreciate it.
This is a group family effort. So thank you, Be Free, for your time. As you can see, I looped in
What up, Be Free?
Mr. Chris.
What's up, Chris? What's up, man?
How are you?
Good to see you. Good, man. It's good to see you, man. We're gonna chat soon. Sure. Yeah.
Pleasure meeting you, Brian.
You're killing it.
Hey,
Yeah,
what's
man.
up?
You guys be safe.
So
yeah, man.
Thank you, Be Free. And as Be Free transitions out, I think, and Chris, good timing. Thanks for joining us. We're at the end of this because we've been going for a long time, but
Yeah.
you know, I think that was a good note to jump in on, because a lot of what we were talking about, I think, is, and what I just took away from this last part of the conversation is very centered on the youth, right? Like the next generation is always very important, I feel. But
Yeah.
we have to provide a north, right? Like what's the north? Like you come into a wonderful thing, like a culture and a sport and a community like skating, but where do you go, right? Because as I see for right now, we I don't want to say we have no north, but we like if you say to a kid coming into skating, what are you gonna get out of this? Not that you have to get something out of it, but where can you go? What's your path? What's your trajectory? What is your north of that?
Yeah.
Right? That's a very shaded area for us right now. It's very gray. There's no definitive north that we have, and I feel that we definitely need to work on that.
Yeah, man. We're gonna get it. Yeah, man.
I think it'll just be a matter of us all coming together, man, and we've got to really we got to get a solid union based of we need organization. Without structure, there's nothing. And I think that's where we're feeling a little bit of disarray right now as a community. There's no proper united structure like an NFL, like an NBA, like what we attempted to do back in the very beginning with the ASA. It was, its initial intentions were supposed to be a unified union of skaters. It was the Aggressive Skaters Association that was supposed to be, that was the North. That's what you aspired to, was to become that pro and in that circuit. Like without there being a tangible item, it's hard to point anyone anywhere. But I think it's just going to take a good, strong community effort for us to all hop on board, whether everyone supports the Blading Cup and that series, or we redefine that series together. Just got, at the end of the day, it's got to be all of us involved. Like it's got to be more than just a handful.
Hands down. It has to, man. This is it's like chess pieces, I mean, everyone has to be on that kind of board where everyone is there. It kind of got, it really kind of went like this again, and
Yeah.
I think that's gonna happen. It's cool to see you guys bringing back Birth and like just being in the mix, making the hashtag games and the Mizus for Ray, like all the stuff you guys are doing is you're keeping the content going, keeping people engaged, and just realizing like anyone, this isn't just like an exclusion thing. Everyone can do this, I mean, it's not like, so having these events that we're going to be all supporting, like you said, like the Blade Cup and Winter Clash and all these competitions, it's that's what's going to build the sport too. Like it's not necessarily not calling it a sport, but the culture, you know what I mean? Like it's going to keep it going.
Yeah,
but
there's a sport aspect to the community. Just the community at large, though, has a lot more flavor than just a sport. That's what makes our community great, is that it is all inclusive, and like you can enjoy and love skating without being a competitor in the sport element. But I mean, what else are you going to call competition? It's sport. I mean, that's the sporting side of our community, is when you're head-to-head competition is like, there's no sense in redefining what it's called. It's definitely a sport, but the community has so much more to give and has so much more to offer than just the sporting side of what we do. But for a lot
It's
of
an
kids,
activity.
yeah, it's an activity for sure. It's one that we can share with our kids. It's one that there's no age limit to it, man.
That's it. All right, man. Well, I'll let y'all be safe, bro. Hit me up.
All right,
I'll catch you soon. Ray, be safe. Reese,
Bye.
Caleb, Mel, love y'all. Y'all be safe.
Nice meeting you.
You too.
Oh,
Peace.
We've gone really long, and I'm so thankful that you all have been so generous with your time. One of the notes that I made listening to everyone is going into the equity and inclusion part of this is that, yes, it's a sport, but it's also a culture, right? And so there's more to it than that, than just and going back to Reese's point from the very top, the ableism part is there's more to it than just the physical act of skating. Because talking about the inclusion and the equity part, like you know, I work in other action sports too, and things that we're actively working on are like workforce readiness programs, right? Or creative careers. So you can be part of this community and this industry or this culture and not necessarily have to be a great skater. There's a lot of other avenues that you can pursue with
You can
that.
go build. You can go build some stuff. Let's build.
Oh, right.
You build it.
Yeah. That's a good plug. Good, good, Chris. Yeah. Well, but so not to
Bro,
be self-serving of that, but that's exactly one of the things that we're working on, that Chris and I are working on, is the Chris Edwards Foundation, where we're taking kids or people from our community, young adults, etc., of all stripes, and bringing them into a skill, right? So the foundation is going to be something where we're teaching them a skill, and they can go out and create a life path for themselves, right? They're welcomed to that through skate culture, but they can apply it to life in general. And I think that's, you know, that's really, really important.
it is because only there's a 1% club, and really,
Right.
and in our industry, especially right now, man, it's not even a 1% club. You know, of the rare few that can actually sustain themselves as a professional skater. You know, at this point, even our top echelon as a whole can't do that. So it's real important that if we can find other ways and other avenues to support our fellow community and those who are in need of of you know, getting a job and being able to fulfill a dream of having family and supporting kids and supporting themselves, and we got to find ways to do it.
Yeah.
We got.
Yeah. No, and also there's so many things to touch on. I mean, next time, you know, I would love to talk to you all more about things. I mean, we're trying to tackle issues of mental health, which I think are really, really important, right, in our community. I will say this, I've seen even today some very, very positive things related to mental health in the community, that right before this call, like all morning, just fielding a lot of stuff in that respect that was very positive, and super thankful for that. So there's some really great things happening, and you know, the hope is that we keep pushing and we can do better. Um, anyone have any closing remarks or any statements? Reese, you want to start?
I think the I think my takeaway from this conversation has been like we got to start small, and you know, one-on-one conversations with people, you know, checking people, you know, and not just letting stuff slide. Like that's what's gonna really help build that greater momentum that we're looking for. And I think until that happens, we're not gonna see the change in the industry that we want to see.
Caleb, any closing remarks?
I agree with that. I agree with Reese, definitely on the one-on-one with members of our community. But I also think it's important to remember what we have been discussing about with companies, and as far as our responsibility as members of our community to hold the companies accountable. And that doesn't necessarily mean putting a company in hot water, but just saying, hey, we're here. It's our resources that are making your company float. So now turn that around and give back to us, because that's how things, you think about a wheel, it rolls in a circle. It's a circular motion. Your energy is circular. You can't have companies and communities not be in that same state of motion and flow. Otherwise, you're going to stop. Things are going to stop for everybody. And so I think definitely having conversations, but also coming together as a group, finding the members of our community who have the power and have the ability to affect the companies more, and saying, hey, we all know as a sport and as a culture that there's more here, that these companies, if they're going to be companies, if they want to be the companies of our culture and of our community, that they need to rise up to the challenge. They need to be fiscally responsible. They need to be responsible to our community, to our passion as our sport, and being not just a company that sells a thing and makes money to make a paycheck, but a company who injects like love and growth into our community, not just a hard plastic and metal thing, but more than that, like effective energy and like putting it in the right place. And obviously getting organized is like the number one step to that, getting organized. That's it.
Copy that. Michaela, any thoughts?
Good.
I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of thoughts, but I can say that I think when we mentioned, I think this uplifting the right people, you know, like we had mentioned really early on, and touching on things like that here and there, like just because you're a good skater doesn't mean you're a good person, and lifting up the right people to reach other audiences and stuff too, you know, because like when we're talking about diversity in all sorts of areas in our industry or community or the companies, you know, there's not a lot of it, you know, and there's also areas where we can lift voices that have things to say, you know, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely, 100%.
It does.
Ramel, you got any thoughts there?
Well, first, thank you, Ray, for having me to this and calling me today. I appreciate that. Just moving forward, I just want, you know, we all have to really stick together. Like, we really have to come together on a lot of things. What was it Caleb said as well? The big brands, the companies that we funnel a lot of money into, they need to take it back to the old grassroots styles, like grassroots styles of how I saw it when I was a kid. And you need to come into these communities. You need to provide some stuff for these kids once in a while and just show face, because for the past over 15 years, I've been watching everyone just putting money into companies, no marketing, no advertising, no help, no sponsorships, no nothing. It's always a select few, and then the majority don't get any love. I just feel like we all need to come together, you know, stay strong together, and you know, hey, if you're wrong, you're wrong, and we need to just continue doing that, how we're doing it right now, and just staying focused. And like Chris even said, and I said too, we need to build a network. It has to be like the NFL has one, the NHL has one, the NBA has one, even Rob Dyrdek and the SLS has one. We need to all come together and create a new way that we communicate, and how we situate contests like a Blader Cup or a Chief Hope Skate-Off. Just continue staying positive and growing, and, you know, reach one, teach one.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I know Chrissy came a little late to the conversation, but we talk about these issues a lot, you and I personally. But any sort of parting thoughts?
Yeah, this I think we just always got to remember that this is a gift that belongs to all of us. We need to continue to share it. And you know, I've been throwing up a lot of posts here lately that this really is our legacy. These are our legends, and this is our story. And we got to remember that we are one. And the more that we can focus on the fact that we are one, and without one another we're nothing, the stronger and the further and the higher we can rise, and make this thing happen for the betterment of everybody. The moment we can really grasp that, I think we're going to see the dynamics shift completely. And then just celebrate, appreciate all y'all. Thank you guys for skating and being part of the community, because without you and without each other, there is no community and there is no us. We are rollerblading, Ray. Okay, just get over it.
Hey, I mean, I think that's a great way to end it. I mean, thank you all for your time, for your insight. What a great conversation. I really, really, really look forward to having more of these with you all. And so, yeah, let's leave it at that and circle back. If you have any thoughts and takeaways, I think the important thing after doing this for several months, I think the important thing, and Michaela's the ultimate note taker of everything.
I took 0 notes. So.
I took a ton of notes, Michaela, so I did it for you. But I think the takeaways and then the afterthoughts too, right? Any other thoughts additionally that you all have, certainly do share them. We're all on that email thread, so please feel free to like type that stuff there. You guys are all very much encouraged and welcome to take part in the aware group discussions. And we'll share that with you all. And so this has been the first Wheels and Feels talk that we've had, and that we look forward to many, many more. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ray.
It was a pleasure, you guys. Thank you.
Love to all you guys. Have a great evening.
Safe, be strong, everybody.
All right, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.